Great day. I'm Pastor Tabitha C. Wheaton. I am excited to greet you here in the new year as we begin our soul sessions. I believe it's the conversation that will really work to help you save your soul. We start today on not such a high note because of all of the recent suicides in our community. I believe that sometimes we have situations that make us weak people, not EAK, not WEAK, but WEEK, meaning in the week that a situation takes place, it is the only thing that we hear about. We're inundated with information. We turn the news on. We read the paper. Our conversations are exactly the same about the one thing that has taken place. But what happens after that week? If we're not careful, after the week, EEK, then we become again weak, WEAK, because we fail to continue to have the conversations we need to have. I want to invite you right now to invite someone that you know may be sad, someone who may be dealing with depression, someone who may be feeling alone, overwhelmed, frustrated, someone who's just living. I believe this is the conversation that is going to help every person with whatever it is their situation could be, to just give them hope. There is hope. I hope we are here to help. Right now, I'd love for you to welcome our sister, Georgetta Medlock, who's a licensed professional counselor, for this conversation. Come on, put those hands together. Thank you so much for agreeing on such short notice to come and have this conversation.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor. So thank you for inviting me to have this conversation. It's needed.
It is needed. Now, let's do this. I'd love for you to just take a moment to introduce you and the work that you provide for our community.
Okay. Well, again, my name is Georgetta Medlock. I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm licensed by the state of Texas to provide counseling services to children, to families. In this particular spectrum, what I do is I provide counseling services and consultation services to families and children in the Harris County area. My background includes I'm also a certified forensic counselor, which means that I work with those who are involved in the criminal justice system and or the courts. And I'm also a national certified counselor. So counseling is my forte. I love what I do. I love the people that I serve. In that, my background includes working 13 years with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and several years with a local managed care organization. So my experience spans the whole spectrum in terms of community services and social services, as well as counseling. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Let me find out just from you why, I think this is so important, why you chose mental health services.
That's a great question. I chose mental health because I love people. And in my own family, I think I shared with you earlier, in my own family, really, really thinking back to why 5 of us, I have 4 siblings, I'm the oldest of 5. So out of 5 siblings, why do we operate so differently? And as I began to kind of matriculate through life and go off to college and become an adult on my own and have my own children, and working more importantly in the criminal justice field and seeing people from various backgrounds, from, a higher income to lower income to mid-income, Black, white, Hispanic, the whole gamut, just wondering why they think the way they think. What makes a person tick? What makes them act the way they act? And so my own personal experiences, coupled with the fact that I've come into contact with many men and women, hurting men and women who are just looking to talk. Because everybody has a story. So I was the one that would listen to their story, right? Regardless of what they had done, I needed to be non-judgmental. So my stance has always been, I want to be non-judgmental. I want to be the person to be able to sit and listen to a person's story, because I needed someone at some point to sit and listen to my story. Hey, here I am. I have something to say. And I find that most times, once you have a person in front of you who can share their story and to get that story out, then most times that person is able to walk through and navigate through life successfully. But a lot of people along the way didn't have anyone to hear them out. Wow. Because if you grew up in the era that I grew up in, you are seen and but not heard, right? And so I think it's very important for people to be heard.
So if it's very important for people to be heard, it's very important for us to encourage people to talk.
Correct.
And one of the things that has come up in the news that impacts the African American community is these recent suicides. And it's not that suicide is new in our community. It's just right now it is so known, it is so pronounced, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, what do you think is happening right now that is, one, creating such an increase in suicide in the African American community? And then two, what do you think, or why do you think it is getting our attention in the way that it is?
To that last question, the media, of course, is highlighting the number of suicides that we're having. And if you're looking at the news and tuning in, you see week after week, day after day, someone has taken their lives, right? I do believe that it's layered. And by that, I mean that suicide is not a new thing, right? But in the African American community, yes, it is more prevalent now than it ever has been. Just face it. Our families traditionally, historically, have dealt with certain setbacks and have learned how to navigate it. But did we really, right? So when grandma was in the bedroom praying, or when mama was in the bedroom praying, did we really adequately deal with the issues that they were going through at the time? So now you have the pandemic. You have the fact that we're living in a totally different day and age with social media. Everybody is in competition with the next person. It's a lot of things, but the pandemic has coupled it. Is it the cause? Is the pandemic the cause? No. But the pandemic has certainly coupled what we've already known and seen. So you have families who have lost income. You have families who have children to take care of. They can't pay for daycare. You have domestic violence that's happening behind the scenes, as well as child abuse that's happening behind the scenes. And then you have all these things, life that's happening. And so when you have a person that is not really well equipped or ill equipped to deal with life, and then you add all these other layers to it, and that person doesn't have a channel or a place that they can put that or talk to, or know that they have someone that they can talk to, then yes, people get in a place where they feel hopeless.
Okay.
And when people lose hope, that's when that whole problem with suicide comes, because they have no hope. They can't see it. They can't see their way out.
Right. Well, let me ask about this hopelessness. What do you think? Because I heard you say that when people are having life and then they get to this hopeless place, how do we approach hopelessness so that we don't end up in a hopeless place continually? How do you address hopelessness?
So we talk about coping skills. Because life is going to happen. How do we cope with life? How do we deal with life when life is dealing us lemons? How do you make lemonade out of lemons, right? And so when you're talking about hopelessness, prime example, I had a friend of mine who called me about a week or so ago. And she was like, I am not feeling myself. Now, the key for her is the thing that she did right is she reached out, which is what we need to do, reach out with no judgment. So when she called and said, I'm not feeling myself, my first question was, what's going on? Have you been sleeping? Have you been eating? What do you mean when you say that you're not feeling yourself? Well, I'm withdrawn. I don't feel like going anywhere. I don't feel like getting out of the bed. So as I'm talking to her, and keep in mind that although I'm her friend, I'm taking that friend hat off and I'm putting that counselor hat on, like, what's going on, right? But being able to navigate both to let her know that I'm not judging you. I'm here to help you, but tell me what's going on. So when someone is getting to a place of hopelessness, the biggest key for someone who is feeling hopeless or is feeling depressed is helping others. That is getting yourself out into community, being a servant, serving others, because it takes your mind off of your issues and your problems and your concerns, and it puts it on that person. Because the reality of it is all of us have had issues in life in which we're dealing with life. Our life has dealt us a blow. And how do you recover that? How do you navigate through that? You have to know that although the options that you're looking at may not be the options you want to follow, but there are options out there. And the option of taking your life should never be an option. There's always someone out there that you can talk to, reach out to for help when you find yourself in that place.
Okay. Now you opened the door beautifully for where I'd really like to get. Because you said, and the Bible supports what you said. You said, when you're feeling hopeless, one of the things that can really help a hopeless spirit is being helpful to someone else. The Bible says it this way. It says, he who often refreshes others will be refreshed also himself. That is my life passage. I used to have another one, but that's my life passage. The problem with that is when we run into a situation like we have in the news right now with Miss USA, who absolutely helped others in every facet of her life. Everything about her helped others. Everything. And yet we see that she still walked to the 29th floor and jumped off a building to commit suicide. Tell me, help us first with even trying to wrap our brains around how that happens, how that's possible.
So there are a couple of things that come to mind when you ask that question about how can someone who has so much from what we see going on, right? And who is successful to a certain extent, who is beautiful, who is giving a lot to the community. But see, first of all, when you're giving back, when you're being a servant, you have to be very, very clear that you are doing it for the right reason, number one.
That's good.
And I talked earlier about how when you are successful, so being successful and having a career versus having a purpose and being grounded in that purpose, because all of us could have a career, but is that really what you're called to do? So you can have a career and not really be happy or satisfied with that, right? And so all of us know when you are living out your purpose, there's a satisfaction. It's not really about the money at that point.
Absolutely.
It's about providing the service, something that you love, that you would do in your sleep. So that's what it's all about. When you find your purpose and you stand in that, I think that's one of the things that can keep you grounded. Again, when we look at social media, when we look at these celebrities and these people who are so-called famous, oftentimes in us individually, we have, oh, I wish I was, oh, I wish this. But that's not always a reality. And so a lot of times what you see is really not what you get, because behind the scenes, that person is putting on a facade as if it's one way, when behind the scenes is truly a different way. I tell people this all the time. When you look in the mirror by yourself, naked and alone, what do you see? And if you're not satisfied with what you see, you need to take the necessary steps to change that. So yes, we can see all the beauty. We can see Miss USA. We can see that she was an attorney. We can see all the accomplishments. But your spirit is empty. Where is your purpose? So I tell people all the time, yes, you can do all of that and do that if that is your desire. But make sure you're doing it for the right reason.
Make sure it's true. That's how we say it around here.
Make sure it's the truth. Yes. And you have to know that, and you have to own that. And also find your purpose. What is your purpose? You have to find something to latch on and to attach yourself to that's outside of yourself.
Okay.
So I tell people that a lot.
Okay. So say I am filled with a lot of good works, but I still don't feel good because I believe that there are people, they call it high functioning depression.
Yes.
You know, I'd never heard that until it came up. And my first thing I called you, I said, talk to me about this high functioning depression. What is high functioning depression?
So
what is it called about? What is it called? I mean, how do we come up with
depression? It's major depressive disorder. Because when people use the term, it's a layman's term, high functioning depression, it's just like someone who is highly functioning alcoholic. Same term.
I get it.
Person who drinks they can do a great job in their 8 to 5, but after 5 o'clock.
I got it.
So the same thing with depression.
I got it.
That person's able to work through their day, be successful, all of that, but behind the scenes, right? So the term, the clinical term is major depressive disorder, right?
Okay.
And so you have family members who say she was highly functioning, and she may have been, but the term that we use in terms of clinical terms would be major depressive disorder.
Okay. And so what's the difference between depression, major depression, and just a little bout with the blues?
So, you have mild depression, moderate, and severe. So that major depressive disorder is a severe depression where it's lasting more than 2 weeks, right? Because all of us have had moments where you're just like, I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like going to work, but it's a moment, right? So you have that moment and you get on with your day. But a person who is majorly depressed can't function throughout the day. It lasts for weeks at a time beyond the 2-week phase. They can't go to work. They can't get out of bed. Those types of things when you look for when you're looking for someone who is in a major depressive disorder. And sometimes with that, what we call clinical depression as well, medication, in order to help kind of help with that. But for someone who is depressed majorly, functioning is a big deal.
Okay.
Can they function? And if they're not able to function, they may be clinically depressed or what we call major depressive disorder.
Okay, so can you be majorly depressed and still function?
You can be majorly depressed and still function, but with people who are majorly depressed, they hit a wall at some point.
Okay.
By that, I mean, yes, you can function. You function till you can't function anymore, and then you hit that wall, and then you figure out that's the person that needs to be hospitalized, or the person that goes into crises, or the person who has worked themselves to a pulp that they do act on their suicide.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got it. Okay. So what do we say to people who recognize that they are themselves possibly dealing with depression and identify the fact that though they may be depressed, they are still being able to function? What should that person, because a lot of times if we are not debilitated or if we're not, we don't have issues with our issue, we don't even call it an issue. So what do we do now when I have information that gives me insight on what's going on with me? And I know, maybe no one else knows, but I know that I'm dealing with high functioning depression, that I got depression, but I've been able to continue to maneuver, be productive. What should that person do?
You have to be willing to call it what it is. And oftentimes people are not willing to call it what it is. They're not willing to admit it because there's such a stigma with depression. I can't be depressed. I'm successful. I'm beautiful. I'm this, I'm that. But you have to be able to call it what it is, call it out. Once you're able to identify that, I may be depressed, I need to reach out for help, then that's when you make the call to a family, a friend, or someone who can support you through it and help you identify, okay, what's going on? How long have you been feeling this way, right? But typically with people who have had depression, and they have not been hospitalized, but are able to function through it, then you look to see those things that you may have missed. For example, the girlfriend that called me, she says, I think I may be depressed. Then I'm beginning to ask her questions, but she's willing to admit, I've been feeling this way. I haven't been willing to go to work. I've been tired a lot. So we were able to talk our way through, okay, this is what you do. I need you to talk to your doctor first. I need you to check the medications that you're on to see if they may need to be adjusted. So what you do is when you reach out to that friend or that support system, you guys start identifying little pieces to put that puzzle together. So you and that person who has the depression knows that they have the support. And what happens is once she was able to identify, yeah, I've been feeling that way. I think I need to check it out. Or I'm texting her and saying, how are you feeling today? Tell me what you did today. Tell me what you ate today. Did you get out of the bed? It takes you sometimes prompting that person, say, no, I need you to get up and eat. Or no, I need you to get up and shower. And so a week or so later, she's like, I feel better. I got out, I walked today. I did my journal today. I read my prayer. So oftentimes it takes us walking with that person through it, because in her instance, I just think it was mild, but it could have elevated to something a little more serious.
Right.
Has she not had the courage to say, I think I may be depressed?
So we got to encourage people to take courage in telling the truth.
Yes.
And I know that sometimes telling the truth is not about the truth. Sometimes it's about who you tell the truth to.
Yes.
And so who should we be telling the truth to? And I'm being very honest, because you can tell the truth to the wrong person and have a disastrous outcome. And so not only have I recognized that you have to be careful with who you tell the truth, but then you have to be okay for a person like me who knows this is what you're dealing with, but this person may not want you to be their truth bearer.
Right. Right.
So who is the person you should talk to when you really, really are able to tell the truth?
This is what the term was used when she called me. And I truly believe this. You have to have someone that's non-judgmental, whoever that is, but you have to have a safe space. Wherever that safe space is, if it's not the pastor, it's not the pastor, your good girlfriend, whomever, a coworker, whomever, wherever that
What's
safe space
And
is.
Face, what is safe? Help us, because sometimes we don't always understand what that means.
A safe space where you can just be yourself without any judgment. You can just lay it all out on the line naked and just be who you need to be. And a lot of times you'll know internally, oh no, I can't share this with this person, right? So a lot of times you have to use wisdom in who you sharing your stuff with, because our stuff is so sensitive, and we're already in a vulnerable state. And so when you share with the wrong person, like you said earlier, it does more harm than good. So safe space means being in a space where you're not judged, where you can just be who you are without fear of judgment, right? Where you can share it freely and not really hold back anything. You just let it out and let that person process it as they would.
Right. Okay. As difficult conversations can be, do you agree that difficult conversations can save a person's life?
Yes. I believe that is needed, because one of the things when you're dealing with suicide, you don't beat around the bush when it comes to someone taking their lives. So oftentimes when I'm assessing clients and I hear that they say, I've had thoughts that I want to hurt myself, my questions are, okay, do you have a history? Is there anyone in your family had a history? Do you have means? Do you have access to weapons, or do you have access to medications? So that history is very important. And you can't afford to jump to beat around the bush. You have to ask the question for what it is. Have you had any thoughts of wanting to kill yourself?
Okay.
Most people, when they're here, they're like, no, I'm just having days when I'm feeling a little sad. I'm not feeling myself, right? But you have to ask the question and you have to deal with it head on. That is a difficult conversation, but it's one that is necessary and it must be had to know where a person is.
That's good. And so now I'm talking family members or friends who are having these conversations. Now I'm talking specifically to people who are not trained and don't readily understand what to do when that comes up. I want us to equip people today. If your loved one, your child, your spouse, your friend makes a suicidal statement or makes a statement about wanting to hurt themselves, what should they do?
If you have a family member or a friend who is making a statement about wanting to hurt themselves, get them to the nearest emergency room for an evaluation. And if you're too far from the emergency room, call 911. They have crisis counselors a lot of times on staff with the Houston Police Department that will come out to you and assess you or that person right away.
So when do we not take them seriously?
I think you should take them seriously every time. Okay. Because you never know when a person is going to follow through on it. And it's too serious of a conversation to take lightly. You know, if they said it's like the boy who cried wolf. You don't know when it's going to happen, but they keep crying. And the cries that they're giving are the cries for help, cries for attention. Pay attention to me. I'm here. This is what I'm saying. So you should take every single thought or every single statement that they're making in terms of wanting to hurt themselves, take it seriously. And when you do that, take them to the people who can do the proper assessment to get them what they need right then and there.
Okay. Let's deal with a myth that has come up in our times about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
The only people that take their lives are the people that are miserable as it relates to means. We know that that's not true. Why? What is it about us that believes stuff will cause us to be more satisfied?
Again, I go back.
Stuff and status.
Social media. Look at social media. Look how prevalent social media is now. Look how prevalent it is among our children. Then our children grow up believing that you have to have this to be successful or this to be happy. We as adults, we fall for that too. So, when we compare ourselves to others because we see on social media that sister so-and-so or Miss so-and-so has this, that, and the other, and then something in us rises up, envy, jealousy, whatever it is, to say, I want that too, right? And so we fall into this concept of having more means that I'm successful. Having a certain bag means that I'm successful. Mm-hmm. But again, that comes from being grounded in who you are, regardless of what you're carrying and what you're wearing. But the media and social media now is so prevalent now, and it has such a it just has such a hold on us as people now because we wake up looking at our phones. looking at what's happening on TikTok or what's happening on Instagram, right? And we buy into that. And so you have to teach your children, even some women earlier, that no, that's not all that it's cracked up to be, and teaching them what it really is in terms of being successful. What does success mean to you? Because for each of us, it's different.
Right.
I can believe that. But I can also guarantee you that what you're seeing behind the screens on Instagram or Facebook most times is not the truth. That is
okay.
Yeah.
And so why do you think social media has such a pull on us? I mean, what is it about social media and gravitating that has such a pull on us?
People want to live in a fantasy.
Wow.
People want a fantasy. They want that life. And I believe that we should live the abundant life. I do believe that. I believe that. But I do believe that people get so caught up in the fantasy, they want things quickly. They want to get rich quick. They want to live the fame and the glory without knowing that the people that have that fame and the glory most times are not happy because they have not tapped into their purpose. So social media is all around us, right? And it's going to be our new normal. It's going to be the future in terms of social media. But how do you use it, and how do you use it responsibly? How do you teach your children to use it responsibly? How do you take a break from social media when you feel like you need that break from social media? Because I can guarantee you that most of it is just a facade. It's a fantasy. Right. And we buy into that because we want to live part of that fantasy.
Wow. So we have a problem with our own reality. And so we gravitate to what's fantasy.
Yes. I believe that.
How do we work on our own reality? Wait a minute. I want to do this. I want to just take a quick moment and just make sure that our viewers are informed on the suicide hotline number. And we want to equip them with a few things that will make sure that they have access to the what to do when. Let me just give them this information and we'll be right back. Okay, I'm feeling a whole lot better since we started this conversation. I'm being honest because just being reminded of the truth that all of us have issues. The issue is not the issue. It's how we go about dealing with the issue if we're willing to tell the truth about it. Past telling the truth about it if we're willing to understand that there is help. Sometimes it's difficult to tell the truth because it's like, what difference does it make? It makes a difference. What it does is it even relieves your own soul. Right. Sometimes doing nothing but speaking it out gives a relief that I don't even think that we're aware of. Right. So I just really want to thank you again. But I really want to make sure that we take a few moments to assist people with a mindset of what things they can do to begin the journey of being their best person, their best me, especially dealing with this mental health challenge that could be a mental health crisis. Yes. If we don't begin to mind it, if we don't pay attention to it, then we're going to be spiraling out of control. But I really want to encourage people to practice, to be mindful, to be sensitive of a few things that I believe can really make the difference in their life and their mental health. Can you assist us with some of those?
I certainly can, Pastor Tab. Thank you for asking. So I think one of the things I mentioned earlier that we could do is being a servant to others, volunteering your time, getting up out of your space, out of your home, wherever that is, and just go volunteer. The food bank, wherever it is, go volunteer. Another thing that I like to recommend a lot is journaling. Journaling is so helpful because it gets your thought out of here and puts it on paper, right? It releases some of that anxiety that you may have, right? Another thing, physical activity, of course, working out. Working out, going to the gym, taking a walk, lighting a candle. Some of the things that I have done is taking a break from social media sometimes. Just take a break. Mm-hmm. Do you know how helpful just taking a break, just giving your brain the ability to rest?
It makes a difference.
And retreat.
You are not aware of the difference that taking that break. When we were in our consecration mode, just breaking from social media and breaking from television, I mean, just having that stillness was really more refreshing than I was really aware of.
Being still, being able to be with yourself, because a lot of us are afraid just to sit with ourselves and our thoughts, right? But that is so important. I love to also recommend affirming yourself, writing affirmations and putting them around your home and repeating that, because some of us are so conscious and so in the habit of repeating negative things about ourselves that we're uncomfortable with repeating positive affirmations about ourselves, right? And then first and foremost should be reading that word, reading the scripture, listening to music. I listen to all kinds of music. Sometimes I ride just with the music off because there's so much going on.
Right.
But taking a break, exercising, journaling, getting with a friend, taking that walk, going down the lake. One of the things that the pandemic did for me early on is that because we couldn't go anywhere, I had no choice but to walk in my neighborhood. But as I walked in the neighborhood, noticing turtles or noticing frogs and noticing things that I probably would not have noticed before.
In your neighborhood?
Yeah, turtles. I did notice the turtles. Just watching them, I just noticed the turtles. But those are things that you would not notice normally because we're so busy in our day-to-day, children, husbands, lives, jobs. We don't take the time to stop. So I would say that you have to be really, really intentional about taking the time to stop sometimes. Pause is what I posted. Just pause and breathe and get really in tune with who you are. Just breathe. So those are some of the things I would recommend.
Okay. What about the I'm not okay needs to replace I'm fine? How do we help people to stop going to the fall line, I'm fine? How do we do that and cause them know it's okay to say I'm not okay, and it doesn't mean that you're a terrible person.
And it doesn't mean that you WEAK.
And it doesn't mean that you're weak. Thank you. Yes, God. What is something that can help us? How do we, I'm not okay today.
Just like you just said it. Because oftentimes we take upon this, the superwoman syndrome. We can do everything. And we're some bad mamas. But at some point you have to recognize, well, you know what? This is becoming a little too much. I'm becoming a little overwhelmed. Let me just take a break. And you have to be having the courage enough to say, you know what? I'm not okay today. I'm not having a good day. It does not mean that you stay in that place.
Right.
It does not mean that you're a weak person. Right. It just means that you were courageous and strong enough to recognize, you know what? I'm not having a good day today. Let me take a step back and take some time to take care of myself, whether it be an hour, whether it be a half a day, a full day, a week. Take that time, recognize what you need, and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And it's okay to say, I'm not okay today. I'm not having a good day.
I'm not having a good day.
I'm not having a good day.
Let me ask, how do we break the stigma for our community with reaching out to seek professional help? What needs to be considered when we know that what we're dealing with is beyond what we're able to deal with?
Getting rid of judgment, getting rid of individually the shame that you may experience when you share. Again, you have to share it in a safe space. But when you share it in a space in which it's not safe and then you're being made to feel as if you've done something wrong, I think that's where the stigma comes into play, because so many people for so long in our community, don't have a good, I would say, the history, because the history in terms of mental health and our people seeking mental health has been in the church for a long time, right? But now mental health is so prevalent now, it's outside the walls of the church. But I do believe that there's still a certain segment inside the church that can assist people who are seeking mental health treatment, but you have to have a safe space. I don't know, because I grew up as AME and I know African American Episcopal, right? Mm-hmm. And I know, just even thinking back then, I would not have dared told anyone that I was having an issue. Yes. So that whole thing just
But God has changed this thing,
yes,
because he's causing social workers to be pastors.
Yes, he is.
And so we are aware that there's more to you than just your spirit.
Yes.
There is your soul. There is your natural. And God, I believe, for such a time as this, I really believe that for such a time as this, he's equipping the kingdom to deal with the now things that are creating issues.
I believe because we have to. We can no longer afford to miss it because whether you're in the church or out of the church, it's happening, right?
Absolutely.
And so as a people, we have to be concerned about our people and what's going on, particularly these babies, right, that are growing up seeing these things and experiencing these things. How do you help them navigate life and navigate life successfully, knowing that they're going to have some challenges? But how do you help them navigate through those challenges? And by that, I mean, I have a 10-year-old and 27-year-old. That 27-year-old, you would think that she would know about life and know what to do, how to do it. Not necessarily, but helping her as she has those bumps. Okay, this is what you do. This is how you handle that. It's not the end of the world. Let me tell you, this is what you, so being there with them, sometimes to walk with them through it.
Right.
Sometimes they're not strong enough, I would say, to walk through it by themselves. But if you walk with them through it, they can get through it. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll have to always be there,
Right.
but you help them get to the point to where they need to be until they can be self-sufficient and learn how to navigate that next crisis in their lives.
Right.
Because a crisis will
Because
come.
it's coming.
Life is going to
It's
come.
absolutely coming. Right. Let me ask again, if by chance someone is interested in making contact with you, because you've been so instrumental today, so very precise and direct and clear with the information that you're sharing. I want to encourage persons that are in need of professional counseling to make contact with you. How do we do that?
So you can contact me at Medlock Counseling and Consulting Services, PLLC. And my direct line is 713-876-2267. They can call and leave a confidential message. I will make sure that I'll have one of my assistants get back with them, and we can talk about where they want to go, where they want to be, and where they want to go.
I love that. You know, today on my way here, I couldn't find my keys and it flustered me. I mean, really to no end, because I am a very methodical kind of person. And when they were not where they should have been, I didn't even have a place to consider where they may have been. And I was panicked. And then I just took a moment and I took that breath that you encouraged us to take yesterday. And I heard the Spirit of the Lord say to me, backtrack your steps. So I went to my office. In my mind, it didn't make sense that went to my office. They weren't there. I searched the couch that I'd sat on. They weren't there. The downstairs little office. So I went in that office and there they were on the table. I'm not real sure when they got to that place. My point is, sometimes in our lives, when we are frantic or when we are dealing with a situation that is overwhelming us, what we have to do is breathe and start to backtrack where this came from. And when we take the trip back, then what we're able to do is get the key or get our peace or get our joy and go on with our day.
That's right. That's
I
good.
want to encourage us not to be afraid to take the journey back, not to be afraid to be honest about what our needs are or what it is we may be dealing with. We don't have to suffer in silence. And let me say, and you don't have to stay in suffering. If you will talk about it, I believe that this is the hour that God is saying, I want to help you turn this around. I'm really, really, really praying that you've been helped. I'm really, really, really praying that you will not allow judgment, condemnation, or shame to keep you from moving forward, doing what's going to help you live your best life. Please don't fail to reach out. Whatever you do, before you go out, reach out, because I believe help is available. I'm praying well for you, and more than well, I'm praying true. God bless you. We look forward to seeing you next time.